Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into, well, Donald Trump, and specifically his behavior at this recent rally in Pennsylvania, and why it's causing, well, I guess you could say it's causing quite a stir. We're going to be looking at this article. It's all about this rally, and also some expert commentary to try and understand, what's really going on.
Yeah, for sure.
So an everyday, right, that a presidential candidate's dance moves become like a major news story. But some people are saying that this could be a sign of something something a bit more serious.
Right.
So what actually happened? Well, this article kind of paints a picture. It's a really bizarre scene at this rally, right? Trump was doing like a Q&A with his supporters, and all of a sudden music starts playing. And he just starts dancing. But it's
being described as, unusual even for him, which is saying something.
Why?
The article describes it as like a battery-operated Santa with a nearly dead battery. Which, you can kind of picture it, can't you?
And this wasn't just, a quick little moment of awkwardness. This went on for like almost 40 minutes.
Holy, 40 minutes.
Yeah. And it's even weirder because Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota.
Yeah.
She was on stage at the time.
Yeah.
And she's trying to like engage with Trump, even like join in with the dancing. And the article just describes this like this palpable sense of awkwardness where everyone's just like visibly confused. Nobody knows how to react.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's one of those things,
Oh, so I think it's really important to keep in mind that, we all know Trump has a history of being unconventional, shall we say.
Right.
But I think this particular event, it sparked concern because of the timing and also, what some experts are saying could be like a potential pattern of behavior. We're not talking about a gaffe or like a misstep here.
Right.
We're talking about something that's making people question his mental fitness.
Yeah.
Especially given that, he's running for president again.
Yeah. And the article definitely doesn't shy away from those concerns.
Right.
It even talks about the reactions from people like Mary Trump, Trump's niece.
Right.
Who's also a clinical psychologist.
Right.
She suggests that what we're seeing is, she uses the word decompensation, which is...
Well, decompensation basically means it's like a deterioration in someone's mental state. And a lot of times it shows up as, not being able to manage your emotions or your thoughts or your behavior as well as you used to. So it's not just a bad day.
Yeah.
This is suggesting, something more serious.
And it's not just Mary Trump who's saying this stuff either.
Yeah.
The article mentions Bob Woodward's recent book.
Right.
And in it, he reveals that General Milley, he was Trump's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And apparently he privately expressed some serious worries about Trump's mental stability while he was president.
Yeah, and Woodward's book, it directly quotes Milley as calling Trump fascist to the core. And expressing like deep concern about whether he even understood or respected, the democratic process. And that is really something. For someone in Milley's position to say that, someone who saw Trump's decision-making process firsthand.
Those are strong words, really strong words.
Yeah.
And that's where things start to get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because we're seeing all these observations from completely different sources.
Yeah.
But they're all pointing to the same thing. It's this pattern of behavior that's, well, it's really hard to ignore.
Right.
And I think the timing, right in the middle of another election campaign, it makes it all that much more significant.
Right.
People are really paying attention.
Absolutely.
And they should be.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of wild when you think about it, this whole dancing thing. It could have just been brushed aside, just another weird Trump moment, right?
But instead, it's like opened this whole can of worms about his behavior. And if he's really fit to be president,
Yeah, it's true. It's like that awkward dance was the tip of the iceberg. And now we're seeing just how big that iceberg might actually be. And speaking of things being below the surface, the article also talks about how Trump's team tried to like spin the whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were trying to play it off as like this lighthearted, spontaneous moment, right? This love fest with his supporters.
Interesting. So how'd that go over?
Well, not great, especially because like we see Kristi Noem.
Right.
And she's clearly uncomfortable the whole time. So it's just another example, of Trump and his team trying to control the narrative, even when it completely clashes with like what people actually saw.
We're living in a world where there's no shared reality anymore.
Yeah.
At least when it comes to politics.
That's true.
And that's a really important point, I think. Because we have these completely different groups of people seeing the same events,
Mhm.
but interpreting them in totally different ways.
Right. And that makes it almost impossible
Yeah.
to even talk about something as important as, a presidential candidate's fitness for office.
Yeah, absolutely. And the article makes that point too. It talks about how, yes, some people,
Wow.
they're really troubled by all this, but then you have others who are like almost energized by it. They see it as some kind of power move.
Mm. Which makes it so tricky, right? I mean, how do you even begin to address concerns about a candidate's mental fitness
Right.
when a good chunk of voters
Yeah.
don't think it's a problem? Or even worse, they actually see it as a positive.
It's a good question. And the article touches on this too. It talks about how Kamala Harris
Okay.
is handling all of this in her campaign. And it's interesting because instead of just like avoiding the whole thing, she's actually using it.
Really?
Yeah. Like she's using footage of Trump in her campaign ads,
Yeah.
including those enemy within comments.
Wow. Okay. That's a bold move.
It is.
But I guess it makes sense. Make people really look at his behavior,
Right.
whether they want to or not. It does make you wonder, though. Is that the only way to get through to people these days? This kind of like in-your-face approach. Can you even have a nuanced conversation about these things anymore? Especially something as serious as, whether a candidate is mentally fit to be president.
It's a good question, especially when everything's so polarized.
Exactly. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, how much weight should we really give to this kind of stuff when we're talking about the presidency? I mean, are we even allowed to talk about a candidate's mental state? Or is that like crossing a line?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. There's no easy answer. On the one hand, we don't want to be dismissive of mental health, Like
Right.
having a mental health condition, it doesn't automatically mean someone can't be a good leader.
Of course not. But on the other hand,
Right.
being president, that's a seriously demanding job.
Yeah.
Right. The stakes are incredibly high. I mean, the president's decisions affect everyone. Not just the U.S., but the whole world. So it seems like we kind of have to consider everything, right?
Yeah.
Including their mental health, their emotional stability.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's what makes this whole thing so complicated. Because we can't just diagnose someone from a distance, right?
Right.
It's about looking for patterns in how they act. Thinking about their judgment, their temperament. Can they handle stress? Can they make rational decisions? Do they surround themselves with good people?
Right, right. And with Trump, it's even more complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because, like the article said, his supporters,
Yeah.
they don't seem to mind this behavior.
Yeah.
They might even like it.
It's like we're talking about two different people.
That's true.
And that makes it almost impossible to even discuss this stuff. It's like we can't agree on anything anymore.
Exactly.
What's right, what's wrong, especially when it comes to people in power.
It's a mess. So where do we go from here? What have we learned?
Honestly, I think this just shows how important it is to stay informed. Yeah.
Don't just take things at face value. Be critical,
Yeah.
and have these conversations, even if they're hard.
I agree. We can't just ignore these issues.
Right.
We have to be willing to deal with them, think for ourselves, and demand better from our leaders.
Yeah.
This whole thing, as strange as it's been,
Yeah.
it really shows you how important it is to have an informed public
Couldn't agree more.
if we want a functioning democracy that is.
Well said. And on that note, this might be a good place to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been, a strange one. But hopefully it got you thinking, and maybe even inspired you to do some more digging on your own. Until next time. Keep asking those tough questions and keep diving deep.